The captains of the Gotei 13 are often considered by many to be the absolute pinnacle of Soul Society's military might. However, we'd be unwise to overlook their vice captains as well, those that serve closest to them and are often embroiled in many of the same battles. The vice captains get an ample amount of screen time throughout Bleach to showcase their abilities and what they are truly capable of. So in this video we're going to be looking at ranking the end of series vice captains, not just from weakest to strongest, but taking into account everything that makes them a vice captain. Their battle readiness and their mental state and just everything that comes together to make them a vice captain. Before we start the list, there are a couple of housekeeping points. Much like with the end of series captains video, in this one I'm not going to be taking Can't Fear Your Own World into account. And there's a pretty simple reason for that. Back when I made that end of series captains video like 6-7 months ago, I hadn't really read any of Can't Fear Your Own World, so it didn't feel right to include it then. And now I feel like I want to have parity between that video and this one, just to kind of keep it fair. Definitely in the future, I'd like to do more rankings where we do take Can't Fear Your Own World into account, perhaps when we look at every captain and vice captain the series has ever seen. But just to have parity with that captain's video that I made way back when, this one is just going to be looking at how the vice captains appear in the manga itself. And the other piece of housekeeping is that not every vice captain is actually known at the end of the series. We're missing vice captains from squads 7, 8 and 13. Not only that, but there is a second vice captain in squad 1, Genshiro Okikiba, but he does so little throughout the story, I'm not even really sure why he was included as a vice captain, and he's not going to be on this list because he doesn't do anything. And before we get started, we are so close to hitting 50,000 subs, so if you haven't hit that button already and you are a Bleach fan, make sure to do that now because you're in the perfect place for content like this every week. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up as well if you enjoyed it, because it really does help with exposure on YouTube, and also the notification bell will help you stay up to date with every video I put out. And kicking this list off at spot number 11 is the new vice captain of the 4th division, Kiyone Kotetsu. So after her sister Isane was promoted to the captaincy at the end of the series, Kiyone has now been moved from the 13th division to the 4th, where she has taken up the vice captain position. And really, she couldn't have been anywhere but bottom on this list. We know absolutely nothing about her, really, other than she used to share the 3rd seat of the 13th division with Sentaro Kotsubaki. Neither of them have ever really shown any inclination of being good in a fight or even having the mental readiness for a fight, as they spend most of the time arguing with one another. Kiyone may have matured now, of course, but we have absolutely no idea. We've never seen her do anything, we've never seen her Zanpakuto, we've never seen her skill in Kido or anything like that, so really we have nothing to go on. That's why she's bottom on this list. And speaking of Sentaro, I think he probably is the vice captain of the 13th division, but it's never actually confirmed, so we can't really add him on the list. Number 10 on our list is a vice captain we have seen in action many times before, but unfortunately for him it doesn't make him any more impressive, and that's the vice captain of the 2nd division, Morechio Omaida. Now the main reason Omaida is here is not for lack of trying. The guy does flip-flop between being incredibly cowardly and sometimes actively really wanting to help his captain win a fight. But unfortunately for him, no matter what he tries, Kubo is reticent to give this guy an actual victory. Against Nerge Parduok in the Fate Karakura Town arc, Omaida manages to outspeed him in probably his best feat in the entire series, land a pretty nice hit with Gagetsuburi, only to find it's done absolutely nothing to him, and Nerge is only killed when Soifon is accidentally thrown at his head. Even much later on, when Omaida rages at the fact that BG9 has impaled his sister and strikes him clear in the face with Gagetsuburi, once again it does absolutely nothing. So even when Omaida does want to take the situation seriously, Kubo doesn't want to give him a win. We know that he's not great with Kido, and Gagetsuburi is not the most impressive Zanpakuto in the world, so unfortunately for Omaida, even if he does try his best sometimes, he has to be second from bottom on this list. The next slot on this list might be the first controversial one, although I'm not sure, but it's the new vice captain of the 12th division, Akon. Now, Akon for me makes it onto this list based entirely on his showing in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. And while we don't ever get to see him fight anyone, and therefore we don't necessarily know how strong he is or anything like that, in my opinion, his mindset more than makes up for it. And we actively see him taking a leading role and responsibility during the Soul Society's most desperate hour. Everything is going crazy during the first invasion. The Quincy have showed up, they're killing people left, right and centre, and Akon is willing to defy his captain and make moves to free Ichigo Kurosaki, to get in contact with Ichigo and then try and break open the Garganta once it's been sealed. Akon did nothing but consistently impress me during the first invasion, even holding out against Shaz Domino long enough to get Ichigo free. And by Shinji's own words, Ichigo chases off Yhwach, so really that's all down to Akon. But I think Akon does an incredible job in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, cementing his worth as a vice captain. And I think he is in many ways a mini Mayuri. You know, they both originated from the Maggot's Nest. I think they both have very similar mindsets, although Akon definitely seems to be a little more stable out of the two of them. So to me, that's why he deserves this spot on the list above Omaeda, because we've really seen that when the time comes, he really can step up to the plate. Next on the list is the current vice captain of the 5th Division, Hinamori Momo. Now obviously Momo has had a bit of a turbulent past throughout Bleach's storyline, having been mentally very affected by Aizen's betrayal of her, and her redemption from that, growing from that and becoming a much stronger individual is one of the really nice success stories of Bleach. However, I don't think Momo really has all that much to offer as far as vice captains go. Tobiyume is not that special of a Zanpakuto, she can basically just fire off fireballs. And really she's never done anything too impressive. Probably her best feat is outsmarting the Trey Bestias and helping Matsumoto by damaging them with her Kido net, which is pretty cool and does show a good level of intuition. In the 1000-Year Blood War arc, Momo is pretty heavily relegated to the side. It's nice seeing her working with Shinji, but she doesn't display an awful lot, using Tobiyume to mostly attack some soldats. Momo has been shown to be overly emotional and having knee-jerk reactions to situations that I don't think necessarily help her. For instance, after Shinji is bombed by Bambietta, Momo immediately jumps into action regardless of the consequences and has to be saved by Komamura. I definitely think Momo is in a much better place mentally in the 1000-Year Blood War, there's absolutely no denying that, and I think she'll go on to continue to improve over time, but for now I think this is a fair spot for her on the list. Next on the list we have the vice captain of the 1st Division, Nanao Issei. Now, Nanao is a weird one because this is a character who, again, before the 1000-Year Blood War arc, never really got much of a chance to shine. We know from the 1000-Year Blood War specifically, however, that she is immensely skilled at Kido, being strong enough to even create a barrier to stop Yugram Hashwolf from getting to her. While her Kido skills are very impressive, nearly everything else, however, is not, and I was actually a little bit disappointed with Nanao when it came to her facing Lil Barrow. Now, to give her a little bit of credit, Lil Barrow is about as terrifying as enemies are. But when she uses the Issei sword, she comments about how, you know, it's scary to wield a sword, is this really what a battle is like, I'm injured, you know. So clearly, Kyoraku has been sheltering Nanao considerably since she became his vice captain, which is very in character for their relationship, but it does seem to have held Nanao back to the point where she doesn't even really know what a battle constitutes, and it doesn't seem to have ever really been in one before. She's definitely got the right mindset to be a vice captain, there's no denying that, and she's quickly able to, again, once Yugram breaks through her first barrier, she creates a second one in a matter of seconds, which is impressive, but unfortunately for me, Nanao's seeming lack of battle experience does hold her back here. And number 6 on our list is another one that was honestly really difficult for me to place, and that's the super vice captain of the 9th Division, Mashiro Kuna. So the only Vizard on this list, and when I did my ranking the Vizards list a little while back, I did put Mashiro quite low down, so she couldn't really be too high on this one. And that's again not necessarily her fault, although I do think she doesn't have necessarily the best mindset to be a vice captain. She's very childish, and we've seen that she overestimates her own abilities as well. Back during the fake Karakura Town fight, when she thinks that she can hold her mask for something like 15 hours, only for it to smash while she's mid-fighting Wonder Weiss, and then she gets taken out of the battle with a single punch as well. That is a bit of a shame. However, Mashiro herself is clearly very powerful, extremely skilled in Hakuda combat, and even able to take out Hulia with a single kick, which again is pretty impressive, but also you have to remember we don't really have anything to gauge it against. Maybe every character could have killed him in one hit, or maybe he's incredibly hardy and Mashiro's kick was impressive. We'll never really know, unfortunately. And again, she doesn't really get an awful lot of time to showcase what she can do, but by virtue of having a hollow mask, having hollow powers, it's clear that she's definitely probably more powerful than the ones that have come before us. The reason she's not higher on this list despite her hollowification is, like I said, her mental state, her battle readiness. I don't think she's necessarily got the maturity to be one of the strongest vice captains on the list. Entering the top 5 on our list now, we have the newly zombified vice captain of the 3rd division, Izuru Kira. And Izuru was a weird one to place for me. Unfortunately, the 1000 Year Blood War arc is not kind to him, as you'll remember. He gets taken out right at the start of the arc, and we don't see him for almost 200 chapters when he returns as a zombie just to randomly fight Lille's weird flamingo clones. But Izuru is an interestingly well-rounded character. Having come from a background in the 4th division, he's clearly pretty good at healing, as we see after Ion attacks Momo and Rangiku. Izuru is basically responsible for saving Rangiku's life from a clearly near-fatal injury. His Zanpakuto Wabisuke is also pretty cool and pretty impressive as well. If he's able to get in close, you're going to do some serious damage to your opponent with an ability that weighs them down to the point where they can't move. And there's obviously the really cool little detail where his sword is shaped in such a way as to fit around their necks. Very macabre, but very cool all the same. Kira is just a bit of a weird one for me though, because I don't feel like he necessarily excels in any of these places. He is very much a kind of all-rounder vice captain, which is not a bad thing to be and has netted him a spot in the top 5. But for me, he's good at Kido, he's good at healing, he's decent at fighting, he's never done anything too stand out in my opinion, apart from take on Avirama Redder, but apart from that, he's not really done too much. But I feel like the 5th spot is good for him because he's been around for a while and he's done quite a bit in the story to showcase that he is quite an impressive fighter on some fronts, but nothing really blows me away about Kira, so I think 5 is fair for him. Next up on the list, we have the vice captain of Squad 10, Rangiku Matsumoto. And I wasn't really sure again where to place Matsumoto because outside of the 1000 Year Blood War arc, she's actually quite impressive. Despite what you might think based on initial impressions, Matsumoto is actually incredibly smart and very battle savvy. She's good against multiple opponents and she does really well holding her own against the Tre Bestias. And she seems to fight quite a few enemies throughout the series, taking on Lupi and Kira in the Soul Society arc. It's only really in the 1000 Year Blood War where she doesn't really get much to do at all, taken out very early on by Kangdu and then returning as a zombie. Despite that, again, I think Matsumoto is another one of these really solid all-rounder vice captains. She's good at nearly everything. She's solid at Kido, she's a decent fighter, and the abilities of her Zanpakuto Hinako, while not all that impressive in my opinion, are still pretty versatile and have got her out of a couple of situations before in the past, such as when she faces the Tre Bestias. I think what stands out most to me about Matsumoto is the fact that she is always willing to have her captains back. Her and Hitsugaya are definitely one of the partnerships we see the most of in the series, and I really think that she comes across as an essential number 2. Number 3 on our list is the new vice captain of the 11th division, Madarame Ikkaku, who is very much what you see is what you get. Armed with his Shikai Hozaki Maru, he is a battle-loving Shinigami, and he's often been pretty strong throughout the series with a decent showing. He obviously loses to Ichigo in the Soul Society arc, but it's a good, brutal battle that really shows off the versatility of Hozaki Maru when it's being used by someone who is clearly a master. Against Edrand Leones, we obviously see his Bankai Ryumon Hozakimaru, which only improves his power even further. But unfortunately, Ryumon Hozakimaru is pretty badly damaged in that fight, and Mayuri indicates that it will never again hold the same strength that it once had. Couple that with the fact that Ikkaku's mindset is not necessarily brilliant for a vice captain. You have to have a certain level of maturity to be a vice captain, and Ikkaku lives for the fight. And this might be fine for the 11th division, but when comparing him to the rest of the vice captains, there are definitely a couple who pip him to the post as far as I'm concerned. Ikkaku has the strength to be probably the best vice captain on here, but the fact that he's very unwilling to use all of his power, the fact he's unwilling to show his Bankai, and he would even rather lose fights to characters like Poe than show off his Bankai, is definitely not in his favour. I actually think the Lost Agent arc does a good job of humanising Ikkaku, who up until this point really was this macho bravado guy who was all about fighting and very little else. But actually in his fight against Shishigawara, we really see him come into his own, and this is actually the very first time I really feel like Ikkaku was being prepped to be a vice captain, when he gives this kid, essentially, a lecture about throwing his life away. And it's really cool coming from Ikkaku, of all characters, who, like I said, is willing to die on the battlefield rather than show his true power. But he says to Shishigawara, like, you know, you're willing to give your life for Kishima, but would he give his for you? And it really makes Shishigawara think twice about where his allegiances lie, and it's a really great little speech from Ikkaku that really changes Shishigawara's mindset. So Ikkaku kind of suffers on multiple levels. You know, his Bankai is probably never going to be the same again, and he doesn't necessarily have the best mindset, but he is incredibly powerful, incredibly durable, very resilient. He's one of the top guys in the 11th division after all. You know, he's going to be very strong. So Ikkaku makes it to 3rd on the list. And so number 2 on this list is, in my opinion, the ultimate all-rounder vice captain, and probably the only one on this list I think that would be really affected by Can't Fear Your Own World, and that is the vice captain of the 9th division, Hisagi Shuhei. Hisagi reminds me of Kira in many ways, but he's like a better version in almost every way. Apart from maybe healing, we don't really know too much about Hisagi's skills there. But he's good with Kido, but even better with his Zanpakuto Kazashini, which is incredibly impressive, very devilish and very dangerous. But what I respect most about Hisagi is his mindset when stepping onto the battlefield, which is obviously shown off perfectly in his fight against Findor in the Fate Karakura Town fight, one of the fights heralded as like an absolute turning point for this character, which I think is clearly true. Hisagi was a very nothing character before this battle, but in this fight we find out his Shikai, but more importantly we find out his mindset and his worldview and his perspective on battle, which is to fear the sword you wield. You know, if you don't fear the sword you wield, you have no right to use it. These are words that he got from the traitorous captain Tozen. Even if Tozen was a traitor, the words still ring true, and they still mean a lot to Hisagi, and they help shape him into the almost ideal vice captain, in my opinion. Kazashini is incredibly dangerous, very powerful. You know, the difference between him and Ikkaku, I was debating with someone quite seriously when coming up with this list as to whether Hisagi or Ikkaku should take 3rd or 2nd place, and in my opinion, Hisagi's all-roundedness and his level-headedness really help him take this spot. But Kazashini in itself is, you know, ruthless. In the moment he activates it, Findor is basically done for, which is not something we should overlook. And Hisagi even goes against Tozen himself, a hollow-fied captain, and while Hisagi does kind of get tossed around a little bit, he is the one who delivers the final blow. In my opinion, signalling the ultimate level of maturity for a vice captain, killing their captain who has completely lost his way and lost his mind. For me, that was a moment of incredible growth for Hisagi, and his character does kind of get stunted a little bit in the 1000 Year Blood War arc because Kubo treats him as a punching bag, which is a real shame. He gets beaten up by Driscoll, by Master Masculine, by Kensei, by Lil Barrow. It's kind of sad when you get to the end of it. He gets his mind taken over by Pepe. But despite all those things, we also know that he has a Bankai as well, so that immediately elevates him above a lot of the other vice captains. And again, that's not really something I can go into until I know considerably more about it and feel more comfortable about it, which will be the list where we include the Can't Feel Your Own World stuff. But for now, I'm happy with Hisagi here at second. I think he deserves it, I think he's earned it, and I think as far as I'm concerned, he is, like I said, the ultimate all-rounder vice captain. And of course, the number one spot, in my opinion, was obvious and clear from the get-go. In my opinion, it couldn't really have been anyone else, and it is the current vice captain of the 6th division, Abarai Renji. Renji has a proven track record, you know, being essentially one of the main characters of the series, one of Ichigo's main supporting friends. He gets a great showing throughout the series for the most part. His showing does fluctuate, there's no denying that. He comes across as very formidable and frightening in the Soul Society arc as one of Ichigo's major rivals and foes, and Zabimaru, in my opinion, has never looked more dangerous than it does then. Renji, as we know, does take a bit of a beating during the Urankar arc and kind of gets, again, thrown around a bit like a ragdoll from opponent to opponent, but he doesn't do too bad. You know, he has some moments of greatness, like when he wraps Xyloporo in his Zabimaru and then hits him point blank with a Shakaho. That sort of thing is really good. Obviously, Renji's real transformation comes with the time skip. We find out he's been training to match Aizen in strength, and he's again able to give Jackie Tristan a nice lecture when he defeats her. But also, Renji really does have, in my opinion, the perfect mindset to be a vice captain. He lives to serve Byakuya, and he is always there for him. Even though they've had major differences in the past, Renji is still there to be the ultimate number 2 for Byakuya. He is the one who is always behind him. You really see that in the first invasion as well. When Byakuya goes down against Asnot, Renji is there trying to help him, desperately trying to help him, going so far as to using Bankai, even though he knows that it might get stolen. He's just trying to do everything he can to save Byakuya's life. It's a great moment and it really cements Renji as the perfect vision of a vice captain, in my opinion. You know, after he comes back from the Royal Palace, he is obviously captain level. He's strong enough that he doesn't need to be a vice captain anymore. But again, that really shows his loyalty to his captain. You know, he just keeps that spot no matter what. You know, it reminds me of Chojiro, actually, in some respects. But with his new Bankai Soho Zabimaru, he destroys Masked Masculine without a second thought. And really, there is no equal to Renji as far as the vice captains go, especially after he comes back from his Royal Realm training. You know, he's beating up Gerard Valkyrie. Admittedly, Gerard's in base, but still, Renji is, in my opinion, unmatched as far as strength goes. His feats are there, especially after the 1,000-Year Blood War. But again, more importantly than that, he has the right mentality. He's very loyal to Byakuya. Again, he's able to put their differences aside, and he is there for his captain. In my opinion, that makes him the number 1 vice captain on this list. Cool, but that's it for the list, guys. Let me know in the comments below if you agree at all, if you'd swap the placements around. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the end of series vice captains list. But until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you then. Goodbye.